Suraj Rao as he talks to us about reimagining global cashew value chain in 2035. Ladies and gentlemen, you're aware, Mr. Rao is a cross-functional leader, P&L driver, and a sustainability samurai overseeing revenue worth over $1 billion and leading Beyond Beans Foundation's board. His commitment extends to embedding sustainable and responsible practices into the core of their operations. With this, I hand over the podium to Mr. Suraj Rao.
Thanks for the good introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and an honor to address this August gathering. I hope you guys are having a nice time in Dubai. This is the best time to be in Dubai before the heat kicks in. And just a few weeks back, Shri and I got talking as to what the keynote address should be. And he turned on the heat on me, more than the Dubai heat, to try and reimagine what we would look like as an industry in 2035. So we will try and do a little bit of crystal ball gazing and see where we will land in 10 years from now. What are the inherent trends which have actually taken root in the industry? What are the undercurrents? And try and see what we need to do to sort of prepare ourselves to where we will be 10 years from now. So with all due disclaimers, don't put a bullet to my head in case things go wrong in this prediction, but we are trying to see where as an industry we would be 10 years from now. So the way we would like to approach, I would like to approach this is to try and break it down into supply and demand. And if we were to look at the demand side, cashew consumption in the form of kernels, if we check the destination markets, has been rising at a compounded annual growth rate of between 5 to 6%. And even though we see yearly volatilities and we feel that there is excess in supply and we are subject to market volatilities, within the volatility there is always a trend. And in the underlying trends, there are certain sub-trends which have taken root in our industry. One is that there is a definite shift in consumer consumption of food, and we are consuming more plant-based diets. There is, over the past 20 years, many economies have moved from underdeveloped to emerging and developed economies, and that has raised the disposable income. And even in developed economies, we see a significant propensity to consume healthier food. There is also a drive from developed economies for sustainable and ethical supply chains. This we have seen take root in various commodities. We have commodities like cocoa, coffee, etc., which are moving in that direction, and they will then, the shadow of those movements will even impact us eventually in the time to come. If these trends have taken in, these trends have resulted in a certain amount of uptake in our consumption. And now for the best buzzword which all of us usually speak about, but how is it going to impact us? Climate change, right? We'll just take a slight detour. We have seen that cashew consumption has gone up, but climate change is going to be good for the cashew industry, because a large part of the greenhouse gas emissions is due to what we put in our mouths. 25% of greenhouse gas emissions is a result of the kind of food we eat. And the food we eat is primarily, in today's world, comprises of meat, and meat has got the highest carbon footprint. Whereas, good news for us is, nuts category has the lowest carbon footprint. For every 100 grams of protein, we burn the least carbon. So if consumer habits are going to shift, the hierarchy will shift towards more plant-based diets, and within the plant-based categories, we are the clear winners. And if we move to plant-based diet, it's going to happen. What is going to happen is we will achieve reduction of our carbon footprint, and as an industry, gain traction in terms of consumption of cashews. To drive the point further, this is the hierarchy of the carbon footprint of the kind of food we eat. Interesting point over here is the bigger the animal, the higher the carbon footprint. So the basic underlying message is consume more nuts. And if this is the secular trend in the industry, in a few years from now, as we go from here to 2035, there will be a higher demand for the nut category. Not only are nuts going to be a preferred part of the overall diet consumption, it is also going to take a lead, or it will gain advantage when it comes to land usage. By 2100, our population, global population, is expected to be 11 billion. We will need more land. And if we are to consume our current diets, we'll require 4.13 billion hectares. However, if the trend, which has already taken root in the industry, moves towards plant-based diets, where nuts are a preferred category, then we probably require just 1 billion hectares. And that means for reforestation, for saving the planet, we will release 3 billion hectares, which is entire North America and Brazil combined. So there is hope for us as an industry. Nuts, I mean, we can all go nuts by consuming nuts. Now on the supply side, there is some concerns, right? We see that due to the underlying trends, there would be an increase in consumption, but then to meet this demand, to meet this consumption, do we have production? And that has been one of the areas which has occupied a lot of debate, that we have excess production, but given these trends and given the growth rate of cashews, we will fall short. Because the percentage growth rate of demand and the percentage growth rate of supply, there is a delta, and we would probably land up in a deficit scenario 10 years down the line. What that will do to our supply chain, what will that do to the behavior of participants, how it can disrupt the market, is something which is open to debate. We can only gaze into the crystal ball and try and see and try and answer these questions. And these could be deficit scenarios, can raise existential questions for certain players. It can disrupt markets. We have seen that happen in coffee and cocoa this year and the past few years, where deficits can really shake markets. So what is it that we can do to address this? And the answer lies in trying to build a business around sustainable supply chains, trying to build resilience around moving the RCN, converting it into kernels, and then delivering it to the customer. Our supply chains, most of the participants over here will agree, are fragile. We tend to base our purchase and sales decisions and our supply chain decisions on price. And price cannot be the only driver. We have to move our conversations as an industry away from price and into something more meaningful. And that has started. Some part of the value chain is already discussing certain meaningful trends. There is investment in processing, efficient processing, which ultimately results in reduced carbon footprint. If there is a reduced carbon footprint, there could be more value that can be translated to the farmer. He gets a higher income, leading to greater production. More and more industry standards have come up at the manufacturing factory level to improve efficiencies. And improving efficiencies, as I mentioned, can reduce carbon footprint. But this is not enough. Most of the innovation that is happening in the industry is happening at the manufacturing level. But what about the supply chain? What about the weakest link in our supply chain, which is the farmer or the grower of cashews? Consistently over the years, if we adjust for inflation, the cashew farmer's income has not kept up with the inflation. And that is something we need to address. And that is what can probably save us from the future scenario of a deficit. And the idea would be then to have sustainable supply chains and invest at the farm level to try and increase the living income of the farmer. Some industries are already doing it, and last year as ETG, we actually were able to announce the launch of Rainforest Alliance cashews, and this year, post 1 year of that launch, we're happy to announce that the Rainforest Alliance certified cashews have reached via some of our cherished partners onto the shelves in Europe, and the consumers are paying that premium, and those premiums are reaching directly into the pocket of the Ivory Coast farmers. So this is one move which can actually raise living income and ensure that production does not get disrupted to then cater to the futuristic deficit scenario. So I would urge all of us as participants to actually invest in sustainability to ensure that your supply chain is protected and your discussion then moves away from just price. One is voluntary action. The second trend which is taking root in our industry is regulation. There will be regulation which is going to come your way. We've seen it happen in industry. There is in Europe certain commodities like cocoa, coffee, rubber, soya, palm oil, and 2 more commodities which are now subject to European Union regulation on deforestation. Now, what that says is that if your product is coming from any area that is deforested, then you will be levied a penalty and your products cannot enter Europe. We feel, and it is highly possible with other directives like the CSDD, Triple D directive, CSDR directives, which are going to come into force in 2026 and 2027, and EUDR, which is going to come into force for the other commodities in 2025, can disrupt supply chain, can disrupt your business. Hence, it is advisable, both as voluntary action and in terms of getting ready for regulation, to invest in the back-end supply chain to ensure that your supply is resilient. So this is another trend which is going to take root, and therefore investing in supply chain makes a lot of sense. Bottom line being, move the discussion out of price and try and secure your pipeline. What is also happening on the supply side is that increasingly due to climate change, most of our large producing areas out of West Africa are probably not going to be suitable for production of cashews. And therefore, it is imperative for us to increase yield and to grow cashews in a climate conscious way. This can happen through drought resistance, high yielding varieties, and engaging in the back end to try and increase the farmer participation and the farmer incentives to grow more cashews. Cashew is also a high carbon capture crop. Companies can use this, and there is already traction in this area into their supply chains, wherein they can offset their carbon emissions through cashews. And that carbon credit can then sort of be revenue, additional revenue for the farmer. This is just one idea where carbon credits can benefit farmers. So in all, 10 years down the line, we could be in a deficit scenario, but we need not be in that scenario if we take action today. So we need to be a little more imaginative. We need to reimagine the way we do business and move the discussion away from a commodity mentality to a supply chain mentality. Finally, I leave you with the thought that the future of the cashew industry lies in our ability to reimagine it, not just as a commodity, but as a catalyst for health, sustainability, and prosperity.